Hi, I'm Jeff Foxworthy, and welcome to Gamekeeper Podcast. If you want to learn more about farming for wildlife and habitat management, then, buddy, you are in the right place. Join the Gamekeeper crew direct from Mossy Land Enhancement Studio as they discuss the latest wildlife and habitat management practices, news, and, of course, hunting. There's no telling what you'll learn, but I'm going to tell you, I bet it's interesting. Enjoy.
All right, everybody. Well, welcome back to the Mossy Oak Land Enhancement Building, and we're in the Gamekeeper Studio. The luxurious studio here.
It is quite luxurious. It's comfortable.
Yeah.
You know.
And Dudley's over here to my left. He's clean shaven.
He is looking good over there.
I actually had a mustache all night last night.
Like a handlebar?
I almost wore it to work.
What happened?
Well, I remember that time Jordan Lasuzo decided to bravely wear a mustache to work, and he showed up and like all of corporate was here. And they made fun of him.
I need to apologize to Jordan since you brought his name up. You know, this week we had a wonderful trip out to New Mexico, and it was we drive right through the hometown of our buddy Jordan Lasuzo. Called him on the way through town, told him we were going to stop by on the way in, and you know, when you're traveling real fast and trying to get home,
sometimes you just need to keep going.
We just kept going, and I'm going to blame it on Jess.
Well,
you know.
Yeah, blame it.
Of course.
On Jess. So then
we're sorry, Jordan. Catch you on the flip side, buddy.
Yeah, well, there's nothing. There's no fast meetings with Jordan.
No, fast talking, fast moving.
But he's going to distract you for a long time.
You know, and I'm really hard to distract. If y'all hadn't noticed,
my gosh.
You know.
Maybe the most easily distracted person this side of the Mississippi River.
Mm-hmm. This is true.
So we have Jason Cleveland over there manning our Army War surplus radio equipment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then Lanny Wallace, who just returned from an elk trip.
Wonderful trip.
New Mexico. And my understanding is you ran out of bullets and had to come home.
And it got tough out there. Let me tell you. Maybe we can hit on that later. But do y'all know how incredibly tough elk are?
How many shots did it take?
All of them that I had. So that was 7.
That's crazy.
It is crazy. They are amazing animals. You know, I learned a lot about there too. I never thought they were actually, you know, originally prairie animals, and the way those dudes have adapted. Because Jess actually, you know, took his in almost alpine. I think he was at probably 8,000 feet. And then I got fortunate enough to actually harvest mine in the desert.
Below sea level.
Below sea level, yeah. So, you know, if you think about, you know, the adaptability of that dude, and then how big they are, and the amount, just the pure amount of, you know, sustenance they would need, and for them to be able to survive in all those different environments. It's an amazing animal.
Well, and Jess killed a great big one as well.
Yeah, he killed a great bull. He really did. I got to tell you, those we were out there with Graham's Guide Service, and I was actually hunting with JJ Rue, and Jess was hunting with Clifford, and the guy that runs the whole show is named Joseph Graham, and it is the real deal. Is the only thing I can say. You know, I've been fortunate enough to go to a lot of places, but these guys are true hunters. And these are all public land bulls that we're chasing. So if you get a chance, just I encourage everybody to get out there and put in for a tag in New Mexico. If you get lucky enough to get drawn like Jess and I did, it is completely worth the time and effort. It's a great experience for sure.
So you're saying it's a great big animal.
Man, that thing's huge.
But so you couldn't hit him? Or what was the problem?
Yeah, you know. It was I hit him, you know. It was a long shot. We were muzzleloader hunting, but we had practiced at actually 300 yards with muzzleloaders. So
that's a long shot.
It's a long shot with a muzzleloader. It is, but was confident. You know, the bull I shot was actually at 310 yards, and you know, hit him in the vitals when on the first shot. But they just don't go down easily, and I can't say all my other shots were as good as my first shot, but I will say he had.
Well, let me ask you this: what is how long does it take you to load that muzzle?
I'm pretty quick.
I mean, does it take a minute?
No, I don't think so. Not me. You know, but we had speed loaders, and it's really important if you ever get in those kind of situations. You need to need to remember to bring the caps with you. That's a big deal.
So how many loads or caps were you when you shot 7 times? I can't imagine you had more than that.
I don't think I've ever carried more than 3 or 4.
Thank you, Dudley. I had 3. I had 7 total. That's because that's how many times I shot. But I had 1 in the chamber and I had 2 speed loads. I'm fairly confident in my shooting ability. Although it kind of, let me down. But it all worked out in the end.
There's meat in the freezer.
There is meat in the freezer.
Did Michael Wayne get all this?
Oh, he got it all. Yeah, y'all will be highly entertained.
Well, that's good.
Now,
I hope they share all the footage.
Yeah. Well, it is. Most of it is over the shoulder. So, I guess live action footage, no recreate. So be interesting to see how it all comes together. But great time, great trip. Jess made a good shot at, I think, a little over 200 yards.
How many did he have?
He just had to shoot 1.
Is that right?
I think I spent
too much. Can't be killed with one shot.
I think I spent too much time training Jess and not enough time working on my own stuff.
Okay, all right. Well, speaking of shooting 7 times, this week that the podcast is airing, the email blast is actually going to have an article on tips for sighting in your rifle. You might want to spend.
I should probably read that again. That'd be good.
That'll be really good.
It would be.
Bobby, you're mean.
Oh, yeah. Hey, he's right. Practice makes perfect. And the funny thing is, seriously, I guess, it was Jess's first time out there, first time to shoot a muzzleloader. So we spent a lot of time and I was encouraging him. And in hindsight, I was like, damn, I need to be working on my own self.
They're so advanced these days, 300 yards is entirely doable.
It is, it really is. And it definitely wasn't that way. I'm sure you grew up like I did, the old Hawken, octagon barrel with the on the side. And when you shot, you pulled the trigger and you better hold it on wherever you had for a second. Because when you pulled the trigger, it didn't go off. You had to wait about a half a second. Then, and then there was so much smoke in front of you, you had to wave it all out of the way.
Oh, yeah.
And hopefully you'd see a white belly laying out there.
That's a primitive weapon right there.
It really is.
And what they have now is not primitive.
No. We're shooting, I think, some kind of super advanced 209 black horn powder and these Sabo 245 grain bullets. And the primers are actually looks like a pistol cartridge. Instead of the old caps you had to squeeze and put on your nipple.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Well, on that, I think we should do a whole show on y'all's trip. We'll get Jess in here.
Yeah. Speaking about easily distracted.
Talking about putting things, wherever y'all need to put them to make it go off.
Squeezing the cap to put on the nipple.
Okay. All right.
Talk about distracted easily. Come on.
Y'all lost me here. Okay. All right. So. What about, this week, you probably haven't noticed, you've been gone, but Dudley, there's been a couple of big deer that I've noticed social media feeds. Matt Jury killed a giant deer. Yeah. 146, that's a great deer.
That is a great deer.
Now, we must point out that Taylor killed one a few weeks back that was a little larger than Matt's.
Are we keeping score?
I don't think we are, but I bet Matt is.
I bet he is too. So did he have? Was he in the biologic?
Anyway,
food plot deer?
Yeah, Matt told me that food plots played a big part of patterning this deer and getting him killed. He named him Holyfield. He said the deer had a big chunk out of one of his ears.
Oh, that's a good name. Well, so was he final forage, clover?
Final forage and radishes.
Final forage and radishes. He liked them, huh?
Those radishes, it just seems like everybody has success.
They are so hard to beat. Mm-hmm. My buddies that I hunt with on my family land didn't know what they were, and I planted them one year and didn't say anything. This was 3 seasons ago. And I get a text. We have a group text going. Yeah. And they said, "What's the deal with the white carrots you planted?"
White carrots.
So we always call them white carrots now. It's kind of our little inside joke.
So we rode through Ebenezer on the way home. There.
Oh, good.
Thought about you. Honked the horn when we went by there.
Yeah, Ebenezer.
So you got plots in down there, ready to go?
I got all my brassicas in, and this weekend I'm hoping to do all my blends.
Good deal. Well, good. I'm not the only one that hadn't planted. I've been thinking about elk for some reason.
David Andrews. I think he's picking up some seed this afternoon.
David is? Good job.
Big Dave.
Big Dave. Shout out to Big Dave.
Yeah. So this week on the Outdoor Channel, the Gamekeepers television show is the show that we call The Culture, which is one of my favorite Gamekeeper shows. So hopefully people can watch that.
We were trying to pick that elk up by the neck, take a picture of it and send it to you.
I wish y'all had. I wish y'all had, because that was that would have been funny. I would have enjoyed that.
I don't know. I love that particular show because it does give you a really look into the culture here. And of course, Jess and I happen to.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah, we did.
As you did this week.
Yeah, it's
left us here working, Dudley and I and the rest of the crew.
Yeah, I think you were turkey hunting. The week that we actually killed that turkey. But I hear you. We did leave you here this week.
Yeah, well, that's okay. So this week's show is sponsored by Levy Outdoors. You see those good-looking slings over there.
I used one all week, and let me tell you, those muzzleloaders are heavy, and it was nice and wide and padded, and I used it a lot. And it's a great sling.
Well, good. Well, they're brand new. They're a Gamekeeper licensee, and guys can go to Levy outdoors.com and check them out. They're really nice. These guys started making guitars.
Yeah, guitar straps.
I'm told that they make the best in the guitar industry.
I would have to ask Dudley. He's more than a musician.
They're good.
There you go.
Yeah, Jason's a musician too.
Jason is a musician.
So look, let me explain what this show is going to be about. So and make sure I make it very clear so everybody listening.
We got some controversial topics today.
It's a little bit. So we've got a guy that is a convicted poacher. He's from Texas, and he poached for many years out there on the King Ranch and the Kennedy Ranch and many other parts of Texas and New Mexico. And
he picked a fine spot to poach.
That's. But let me just make sure I'm clear. We are not having this guy on to glorify or bring attention to any of his activities and in any way act like this is something good.
No.
What I'm hoping to do is that we can interview him, talk to him, and learn how we and people listening to this podcast and people that we care about, Gamekeepers, can help to poacher-proof their properties. So
poacher-proof property.
Yeah.
I like it.
I'd like to just try to get into his mind and see what made him choose this or that. Of course, the King Ranch, why wouldn't you choose? I mean, if you're down in that part of the world, that's the Holy Grail. But just, I want to ask him questions. I want y'all to ask questions so that we can maybe learn how to better protect ourselves from poachers.
Hey, man, that's a great subject. I know Dudley's had problems before. We've all had problems. It's really tough when you work so hard on your place, and then, whether it's turkey hunting or deer hunting, and the first thing you get there is see evidence of somebody else being there before you did. Mm-hmm. It's quite disheartening.
Well, I think from what I've gathered, this guy was as good as it gets. Mm-hmm. And
doesn't he have a book or something?
That's how I found out about him. He wrote a book about his adventures. So. Or misadventure.
We all believe in forgiveness here.
Absolutely.
We've all done things we wish we hadn't done.
No doubt about it.
Cast not the first. What does that Bible say about casting?
Something about a glass house.
Somebody cast the first stone if you don't. But I just I just want everybody to know we're not trying to act like this is.
Glorify or advocate anything here.
Exactly.
No. Right. I think that's great you said that because it is important to learn. And I guess he's reformed.
I think so. I don't know what time he served. I don't think he actually had to serve any time, but they ended up catching him, and I think he had a bunch of fines to pay, and I think he may have had to do some community things.
Service.
But we can ask him about that.
Cool.
So it's not every day that you. Actually we all think we know people who are poachers, but
right. We definitely know people that are poachers.
But it's not every day you get to actually talk to one. So
great.
Anyway, why don't we take a break, and producer Cleveland, if we'll see if we can get Charles on the telephone.
The Gamekeeper magazine is our life outdoors on paper.
We love GameKeepers magazine.
It's full of great information.
Full of ideas on how to make the habitat better.
From plots to trees
to whitetails and waterfowl.
It's total farm management.
There's so much information in Gamekeepers,
especially when it comes to managing your property.
You can't go wrong if you want to improve your habitat for wildlife.
Pick up our Gamekeepers magazine.
Gamekeepers,
the Journal of Wildlife Stewardship.
All right, everybody, welcome back. We have tried to get Charles on the phone, and we have failed.
Apparently, the wind's blowing out there.
Yeah, so he's going to call us when he's got a better signal. So why don't we keep the show moving on?
Yeah.
And,
yeah.
talk about some things. And,
real world problems.
Yeah, until he calls back in. So
have you, speaking of poaching, I know you might have had some, I don't know. You know, Bobby, I think you're a pretty upstanding guy. Maybe some things you might have done in the past. I mean, I don't know, you know, might as well throw it out there. I mean, the Prince is, you know, he's telling everything he did.
Now that everybody's listening.
Yeah.
Well, you know, as a very young person, I may have made some bad decisions at a time or two that I regret in some scenarios, but I learned, and you know, I have the utmost respect for wildlife and our laws and all that now, for sure.
Yeah.
It's very, very important.
So you skirted around the question there. You know, have you ever broken a game law?
You know, there was a time in my life that I misunderstood.
Hey, that's a great way to look at it.
30 minutes before.
It is quite confusing.
Before the 30 minutes before sunrise and the 30 minutes. I
did too. I thought it was after sunset, not before sunrise.
So I'm going to admit to this. I have shot some wood ducks, but after hours, this was many, many years ago, but I honestly thought that was the rule was 30 minutes after sunset.
Well, I've done that too, honestly. You know, I think I was introduced to duck hunting. You know, we went down in the river bottom in the afternoons and waited for the wood ducks to pile in there. I'm
just thankful I never got in any kind of trouble, because it would have been very embarrassing and it would have been hard to explain because it was just me being dumb. Is that a phone call coming in?
There's a phone call coming in.
Let's see if we can hook up with him.
Maybe it is Charles.
All right.
It did it again.
Boy,
it's going to be 20 minutes before I call you back. That's what he said.
Doesn't matter work. We got enough we can talk about for 20 minutes.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's me. I do remember that. And once I finally learned, when it was explained to me by somebody, I was like in shock.
Yeah.
And, and I've certainly repented for all that.
Because
I felt bad about it. But what about you, Dudley?
I have a come clean story, but it was purely accident. And yes, the first time I ever went duck hunting was with my grandfather.
On a wood duck roost?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think I was 7 years old, and I killed a wood duck with my 410 that was like 4 feet from the boat. Mm-hmm. And it was actually banded.
Oh, wow.
Goodness gracious.
Yeah.
But when I was a young, new turkey hunter, I shot at a gobbler that was 10 yards directly in front of me, and a hen flopped that was more than a 90-degree angle to my right and had one pellet in its head.
Hey, that's why I believe the conservation officers have the latitude that they have, because, you know, they're on the scene to interpret whether you were, you know, I guess what your intentions are more than anything, you know. I know everybody's running those situations. I'm like it, both of y'all. You know, I was introduced to duck hunting in a wood duck roost, you know, way back when. So, anyways, just important to know where they
when you're supposed to do. You know, we talk about the stages of a gamekeeper where you just want to
get one,
and then you want to get a
limit.
You know, and
then get a big one.
We've all probably been in that scenario when we were younger, where, you know, you want to get a bunch of them. Mm-hmm. You know, and boy, I'm glad I kind of got through that phase.
Pretty quick.
Well, I'm through it now.
Oh, good.
It may have been a long phase for me, but that one can get you in trouble if you're not careful.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Well, everybody makes mistakes.
So what else, Dudley? What else have you done wrong?
I've never done anything else wrong in my whole life. Those are the only two bad things I've ever done.
Ever. Well, I'm going to blame most of my mistakes to ignorance. I guess is the best way to put it. Once you know and you learn better, and it's all about your intentions, too. I don't think even when you're in that get one phase, you're not, I think you're so hyper-focused on getting one that,
I tell you what I've been seeing on social media lately, and it's a little disturbing. And some of my friends are seeing it too, and we've discussed it. People are getting on these Facebook groups, and they're partially joking, but they're also acting like they're going to go on somebody else's land and kill a turkey, and it's their right to do it. And it's almost like they joke about it, but they're not. They're trolling, but what it does is it encourages other people, especially younger people, to join in on the fun. And I think it's not as much of a joke a lot of times anymore.
No, you're right.
And so I'm just going to say that I'm not a fan of that. I don't approve of it at all.
No doubt. Well, wildlife is, even I think I get this right, talking about in the gamekeeper times, even in Europe, they had the commons, which was public land. And, that's where the people would go to harvest firewood and hunt and all those other different things. And the bottom line is in most of the states, the wildlife is property of the state. But that doesn't make a difference. Private land ownership and private land ownership rights are part of the keystones of America. They really are. So, yeah, I agree that I don't own that whitetail, but I do own the land. And even owning the land is just the right to use it while you're here, but people have to be respectful of that, Yeah, I mean, that deer isn't mine. He's crossed my land, but it's still my right to be on that place and my right to utilize that property based on the private landowner laws and rights of the state. So I hear you, Dudley, loud and clear, about you don't own those fish, you don't own those wildlife, and they're right. But, you do own the land, and there are rights that you pay for those rights. Right. And you pay for those privileges, and people need to respect that. They really do. Now, public land, just follow the rules, do your deal, and be respectful of everybody, and everything will work out good in the end. But it is an issue that you see come up.
I've heard people discuss it on other podcasts and shows, and it's happening. And it needs to be addressed, and we as hunters need to stand up and speak out about that kind of stuff.
Be respectful of it, 100%.
So do we want to get started with the Ask Dudley?
That's fine. We can wait on Charles to call us back.
Cool. We got to have this awesome intro.
Yeah, let's cue it up, Jason.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Once in a generation, a mind comes along, a mind that understands more than the average person and is more than willing to share his knowledge. From trees to food plots to fertilizer, Dudley Phelps knows so much that he has forgotten more than he remembers. And now he gives you the chance to ask the burning questions in your mind. It's time for Ask Dudley.
Hey guys, this is Jeremy from Central Mississippi. I had a question about food plots. By the way, love the podcast. It's one of my favorite shows. I've got about an acre. That's what I'm limited to planting this year. And I may have waited too late. But I'm just needing to know if I'm going to plant that acre, if I need to plant it mixed with two different foods or, plant all the same thing. I don't have any neighbors that really hunt or manage their deer, around, so I don't have any competition. Just needed some feedback on it. Like I said, it may even be too late to plant this year. If y'all could just answer that for me, I'd appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
Great question, Jeremy.
Super relevant because I hadn't planted my food plots.
Right. And I haven't planted most of mine either. So it is not too late, especially in central Mississippi. So you're kind of on that highway I-20 parallel there, and you're fine. I mean, in fact, until brassicas came into the game years ago, most people waited to plant. You know, now that brassicas are around, people are planting a little early to get a lot of growth before it gets cold. But the traditional plantings, you know, cereal grains, clovers in the South, people waited until October to plant.
Or November.
Or November, yep. You know, farmers usually don't drill wheat until November.
That's right.
So my advice is stick with a blend, something like Winter Grass Plus, Green Patch Plus, Outfitters Blend.
Deer plot.
That would be a fantastic one.
So cereal grains, clovers, brassicas, one of those blends will work well. You might want to scatter a little perennial clover in there, like some Clover Plus with that if you want to. That way, you know, some of those portions of that acre may thicken up with some really nice clover, and you can actually disc around that next year. So maybe half of your field will be perennial clover. The other half can be in something else. So no, you're not too late. Just do a soil test, get it disced up, you know, put what you need to and get it planted.
So the logic behind planting the brassicas earlier, is that to get a more established root system on the plant? I mean, is it?
All the above. That plant just, when it's got that 30 or 40 extra days of warm growing season, that's when you see those plants get really big and those boat paddle leaves on them.
Become more browse tolerant.
Well, they produce so much more forage. You know, these brassicas can produce up to 10 tons of forage per acre. Now, so you think about that, that's those really big leaves. That's when they start producing so much. So as they get planted a little bit later and don't get that 30 or 40 days of extra growing time, they still look that brassica shape, but those leaves just don't get as big.
And I know I've heard Toxie talk about it. He wants, you know, sometimes when those nights are still in the maybe 50s and 60s and the days get up in the 70s and 80s to really get his brassicas established early. And
it's all about moisture, though, and September is historically the driest month of the year.
Right. Here.
So that's right, in the South. So unless and of course this year we've had quite a few tropical events, hurricane events.
A few hurricanes this year.
It's it's if you can get one of those in late August, early September, that's when you can really make those things jump.
And you mentioned Toxie. He always makes a good point that it seems like every year, right around Labor Day, you get that one rain event that shows up, and it might not even rain again until mid to late October. But if you can be ready and have your spot ready, get some brassicas in. If not, wait a little while and plant some blends. Another trick, if you're running late, you can put your brassicas a little bit closer together. So plant them they're not going to get as big. You would never want to do that early because they can choke each other out. But if you're running a little late, you can plant it a little thicker, knowing that the plants aren't going to get quite as big.
Give you a little more forage.
Yep.
A little more tonnage.
Interesting stuff.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jeremy. Good question.
Thanks, Jeremy. Appreciate you calling in.
You got another one, Jason?
Hey, I would like to ask Dudley about some sawtooth oak trees that I have. My name is Art Hammond from Goodwater, Alabama. I've got about 6 or 8 sawtooth oak trees. They're about 15 years old, and they've yet to bear any acorns. Wondering what I can do to get some acorn growth on those. Thank you. Enjoy your podcast. Keep up the great work.
Art.
This is awesome.
Yeah.
Goodwater.
Goodwater. Where is Goodwater?
I think it's in South Alabama.
All right. Sorry.
That is a good question, Art. And I have heard that question before. And I actually have that problem myself. So several years ago, Mr. Fox brought it up. He had some sawtooth that were huge and had never made acorns. we think we figured that one out. He planted those in an area that was very alkaline. The pH was really high. And we think that's what it was. I hear people up north having problems with sawtooths, not making seed, not making acorns. And my theory is that may be a latitude thing. But here in the South, that shouldn't be a problem. So my advice first would be just to get a soil test, see if there's something wrong with your soil. Maybe it's really low in something. Another thought would be to think about your history. Are you surrounded by a bunch of pine trees that have been sprayed in the past? That's my problem at my farm. We had our pines sprayed. They spray a release, maybe Arsenal and Oust, and it didn't kill the trees. They were right on the edge of the pines, but some gets in the soil, and some might have gotten on there. They didn't grow leaves the leaves were stunted looking, and ever since then they all survived, but they've never made a crop of acorns, and that was 10 years ago. So that might be something to look into. Another consideration is, not all oaks can pollinate themselves. I think it's kind of an individual thing. So you may just want to plant a couple more sawtooths around it. Maybe then they'll be able to pollinate the trees. So that's some thoughts. I know that's not 100% answer. I really didn't completely answer it, but those are some things to look into to try.
So, Mr. Fox, is the soil was too basic or too acidic?
Too basic.
Too basic. So is there anything you could amend or put under that tree to increase the?
Yeah, you can add sulfur. So that's like the opposite of lime.
So would you just top dress it under the tree? I mean, could you put enough to make an effect on it?
So sulfur breaks down. There's a chemical reaction that turns into sulfuric acid, which acidifies the soil. What I found works best, and we just decided not to fool with it. But I've had customers dig little holes in the ground in and around the drip line, and you put sulfur, flowers of sulfur. You can buy it by the 50-pound bag in the ground, and that will leach out into the soil and change the pH directly around that little wad of sulfur, and the roots can get what they need, what's blocked and now released because the pH has changed.
And the pH being so basic has nutrients locked up.
Correct.
Is that right? Gotcha. And then if it's too acidic, are the nutrients locked up or just too free flowing?
It's the same thing. It's just different nutrients.
Opposite in the spectrum.
Yeah,
I gotcha.
There's a graph you can look at that's widely available online that shows you that relationship, pH to nutrient availability.
pH to nutrient availability. So we need to Googly that.
So I've got some friends around Selma, and they're in that black belt area where there's a lot of lime outcroppings, and some of their plots are the pH is higher than 8. And they've been putting sulfur on them. And they said it does help, but it is a very, very slow process to do that.
My theory on that is just grow something that is adapted to those soils.
What they've found, there's a variety of alfalfa that likes really high pH. And that's but they can't get it to be perennial. They have to plant it every year because it's so hot and dry.
Yeah, Toxie's got some 8.2, 8.3 out at the, out here in the prairie at the right place and whatnot. It's like cedars and, Osage orange and
white
Bodog.
Yeah.
Bodog.
Not much likes it.
Yeah, well, that's interesting. I just realized we don't have a close to that. We could have that. We need to get that same guy.
And there you have it.
With a wrap up.
The guy that's forgotten more than he can remember.
So, Art, I don't know if that helped you a lot, but that gave you a few scenarios to consider.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That was really good.
So, what did people go to the website or social pages to submit questions?
Jason McKellar figured this out, and he's got something on our website where they can speak into If I'm not mistaken.
I'm going to go ask.
Go ask him right now.
Go ahead, because we can get.
Yeah, don't talk about me.
You
while
see
I'm
how
gone.
professional
Don't talk
we
about
are?
my shooting.
7 shots.
The old 7-shooter.
Yeah. So that's really interesting how soils are so different across, because you really doing a soil test on your own property. It is so important to know exactly what needs to be done on your dirt, as opposed to just listening to this podcast and hearing us talk about adding 2 tons of lime, because you would not, if your soil is 8.0, you would not want to add any lime.
Absolutely not. That would have a negative effect.
Yeah. That's right.
So, he's back.
Did y'all miss me?
Not really.
So, our buddy Jason McKellar, the digital whiz in there, has pinned a post to the top of the Facebook page as an Ask Dudley button, and you can click on it and submit your questions right there. So
Perfect.
Send them on in. Those are awesome. We appreciate those guys.
It's good to hear the guys speak. So thanks for both of those guys for sending in their questions.
I love hearing those questions. That's really, really cool.
Those are good questions there.
Yeah, they were good. So
they're fun to answer too.
Dudley, what are you going to reward these guys with?
Why don't we send them a little gamekeeper kit?
Oh, that'd be great. So when they go to the Facebook page and they submit a question to Ask Dudley, be sure to leave us your address, maybe?
Leave your physical address.
Physical address.
We'll send you a happy.
Yeah, send you a Gamekeeper gift pack. We appreciate everybody calling in and diving into the mind of Mr. Phelps.
Let's chat.
So while we're here, I'd like to start a new little segment where we every week kind of explain to people something that they may not know about wildlife.
WTF? What's that forage?
I might have to think about that one. I don't know.
That was one of our brainstorms.
That was a brainstorm. That's right.
That we decided to definitely not use.
Yeah, WTF. So what are we going to talk about?
I was going to.
Did you know some stuff?
Well, I was going to say the first one here. Did you know that quail, wild bobwhite quail, sleep in a circle?
Sleep?
In a circle with their heads pointed out, and then they just the covey scrunches together to stay warm all night long.
So do quail don't roost? They sleep on the ground?
They sleep on the ground.
Oh,
but
okay.
I probably would refer to it as roosting, but they actually sleep on the ground and they fly to where they're going to roost or set up in a circle. And then in the morning when they wake up, they fly as a group away from wherever they slept.
So you think, do they sleep or in the same place every night?
I don't think they do. I think they move around.
So you think there's one like this, like, hey, it's time to go to bed, and then.
Well, yeah, follow me. It's probably a hen.
Yeah.
And she probably picks a place. But I'm just fascinated that they sleep in a circle and for safety.
So they all get together and they start out with their, I guess, backs to each other.
I think so.
Facing out.
And just scrunch tighter and tighter.
Probably to minimize predation,
Yes.
and get closer together to get warmer.
That's right. So I've actually, deer hunting in the winter, in the dark, have stepped into or close enough to them that they've flushed and scare you to death in the dark.
That is so scary too.
Yeah, that'll scare you. That's for sure.
They're such a cool bird. So anyway, hopefully every week we can have some little.
Yeah, that's neat. I knew the part about the circle, but I'd never heard about how they're good at hiding their scent by flying instead of walking to their.
Yeah, so there's no scent trail to wherever they're going to roost, and then they fly to where they get the morning started. So there's no scent trail there.
Gotcha.
If somebody has a picture of that, send it in. That's really cool.
So, since we're talking about roosting, would you consider something roosting something that flies up in a tree or just a bird that sleeps?
That's a good question. When I think of a bird sleeping, I think that bird's on a roost, and it probably does sound like he's in a tree, but quail definitely are on the ground.
Well, look at there, Dudley. I've got you a picture.
Oh, that's cute.
Isn't that good? Look at them.
That is.
And you know what I Googled? Quail roosting.
Is that right?
Yeah. Quail roosting.
Well, I'm a big fan of bobwhite quail. You know what? They're my favorite thing to eat.
Speaking of that, I love to eat them too. And if you don't get fortunate enough to be able to harvest some quail, which Bobby brings us some every now and then, we don't get invited hunting much, but he'll bring a couple frozen in a bag to us sometime.
A couple? I bring a bunch.
But if you want quail and you can't get access to them, we do have some available at the Gamekeeper Butchery site, which is
imagine that.
GameKeeperMeats.com. Y'all go check it out. There's a wide variety of farm-raised wild game available.
So a guy can order quail and have them shipped right to his house.
Right to his door. Wild game delivered.
They are delicious. It's a white meat.
It's good.
And if you haven't had some, you need to try it.
Yeah, we remember those quail thighs that were at Vandy and Sarah Francis's wedding?
Oh, man.
Man, those things were good.
Yeah, they were. Those were drumsticks.
Oh, they weren't thighs.
Well, they were thighs. No,
I would think it was a leg quarter.
They were quarters.
They were quarters.
Maybe that's what they were.
Yeah,
but they were little bitty drumsticks.
But they Frenched the knee end.
Mm-hmm.
And so it just, you was able to just, like a lollipop.
Like a little popper.
Yeah, they were good.
I probably ate 30, 40 quail eggs that night.
Yeah, I did.
And you're a fan of pickled quail eggs, aren't you?
You know what? I eat them. I have eaten them.
It's a novelty for you?
Yeah, I'm not really a fan of it.
Yeah.
They have a real different flavor to them. But I am a huge fan of grilling quail on the barbecue, wrap them in bacon.
You brine them or do you just...
Wrap them in bacon and soak them in Italian dressing.
Italian dressing. Italian. What that Italian dressing?
All right, look, we're putting everybody to sleep. So we've got to get Charles on the phone. So why don't we pay some bills, take a break. Jason, let's try one more time. Let's see if we can get Charles on the telephone when we come back.
When we come back, the Prince of Poachers.
When I first bought this farm a short time ago, every single field was grown up with brush 8 and 10 feet high. But it went from that to this. And even though I planted biologic with very little moisture in the ground, I was really amazed at the results. I just sat in this field with my wife as she shot her very first deer. We could not be happier. We made a memory that will last a lifetime, all because of the effectiveness of the best food plot seed on the market. Biologic is better seed, pure and simple. Log on to plantbiologic.com to learn more.
Hey folks, it's Jeff Foxworthy. You know, when I was a kid, my dad bought back the farm that he had grown up on, and I absolutely loved that place. I knew every square inch of it. It truly was my favorite place on earth. And when you're looking to find a favorite place for you and your family, Mossy Oak Properties can help. Visit mossyoakproperties.com to begin your search today.
Charles, can you hear us?
I can finally hear you.
In the house.
Yeah, I'm at the post office.
Hey, whatever works.
Hey, thanks for taking the time and driving to town to talk to us.
You bet.
What is the wind blowing in a certain direction out there or something and your cell phone doesn't work?
It's windy and cloudy, which both of those they work against me out where I live in some rolling rocky hills. I get shut down on my signal real easy. Yesterday it was fine, but today's a different story.
I can appreciate that, Mr. Charles. I live in the river bottom and very, very rarely have a cell phone signal. It kind of works to my advantage from time to time, though. Especially when Bobby's trying to track me down.
Well, Charles, let me introduce you to everybody. We've got Lanny Wallace.
Hey, Mr. Charles.
He's been with Mossy Oak a long time, and we've got Dudley Phelps over here.
The Dud.
And I'm Bobby Cole. You and I we have talked a couple of times in preparation of this, but I ran across so our guest is Charles Beaty. And I ran across a book that he's written that was very surprising and I'll use the word shocking. He's basically admitting to having poached the King Ranch and the Kennedy Ranch and some other places in Texas. And I was kind of surprised about this, but I picked up the book. It's called The Prince of Poachers and read through it. And it's pretty quick you see really quick. Charles is fascinated by big antlers, like a lot of people are. And I think it's probably led him down some bad roads in his life. And so, Charles, we wanted to ask you, we've got some questions. We wanted to kind of hear your story, hear a little bit about your life. But we also wanted to make sure that we ask some questions, hoping that you could help our audience to be able to, I'm going to use the words, poacher proof their property, or know if their property is being poached, just so we could help our audience be aware of this.
Yeah, I don't know how things are nationwide, but here in Texas, it's upgraded to a felony now to do what I did and jump the fence and go on another place without consent of landowner to hunt. And so that has stopped, I would guess, in the high 90% bracket. I don't know what else to think. Anybody in their right mind here in Texas doesn't do it anymore. You know, these kids get caught every now and then, but, you know, boys will be boys. But I don't know nationwide, state to state, if they're on that same level or if they just, you know, have like a Class A misdemeanor charge on it that's fairly severe. Here in Texas, you go to prison, first offense, minimum mandatory, 6 months in jail. And it's 2 to 10 for known poachers, so-called headhunters that, you know, leave the meat, hunt miles deep, take out only the Cape and horns, small amount of meat possibly, but depending on weather. But they throw the book at them. They'd give me 10 years if I got caught again, because the deal I cut was to quit, you know, and I was ready to quit anyway, and getting caught just made the decision final. I'd done it for a span of 22 years, and you know, there's a long story to that. It's ended for a spell of 6 years, and then I returned. You know, I had been in church for 6 years and had a real rough divorce. Lost my son in a custody battle, and of all people, some police officers that were customers in my taxidermy shop talked me into going back. One talked me into taking him first. The other one saw the 5 deer he killed and went crazy and just had to go too. And I took him next, back to back, and they both shot really good deer. One was in the mid 170s with a longbow, and they had the hunt of a lifetime. They knew they would never do it again. They just stuck their neck out once because all their money they spent and efforts on legal hunting had never panned out, and they were disgruntled, and they just, took a chance once to dance. And then they did it. And then for me, following a rough divorce like that, not doing it anymore for 6 years there, and then going back to it, it just lit a bonfire. I was bitter because of my divorce and losing my son to a lying ex-wife, and I went on a rampage. I mean, I brought out 75 deer versus the first 41 in the first 7 years I poached. And I was dragging them out in roads and stuff. I was mad. I was angry. I was acting out of vendetta against the state of Texas for giving my ex-wife custody on her lives. So, see, it's a deeper story than just the poaching.
Yeah,
and
sounds like
then when it came to an end, the game wardens had figured out and found out most nearly everything about me. They profiled me. They'd done a lot of investigation. They knew why I was doing what I was doing. So they were.
How did you elude them for so long? What was when I?
It's a big place. It's heavy brush, and if you're good after being, professional for years at it, they wouldn't have caught me when they did if they hadn't been tipped off. I got set up. A guy was up on revocation of probation, fixed to go back to prison, and he set me up. He took me across the bay in a boat, kicked me out on the shore, and they knew he was going to do it before he taught me into letting him take me. And so then they put up a search. They had 9 men spread out a mile apart, till they finally picked up tracks. The last one to the farthest east picked up my trail. Then they start leapfrogging, sending a man out 2 or 3 miles ahead of you, trying to run into your trail there. And once they establish a direction, they're able to close in pretty quick. But, they followed me 17 miles that third day of that hunt before they caught up with me.
That's one of the things that struck me with your stories is how much ground you would cover.
Yeah, I was just shocked by that. That's 17
miles.
That's
how I got away with it. Yeah, that's how I got away with it so long. I never stayed in one place too long. If I popped a shot and killed a deer, I'd be 4 or 5 miles away real quick.
Well, there's so much more ground out there with, correct me if I'm wrong, but the King Ranch is the size of Rhode Island, I think.
It's huge.
Yeah, it's still up close to 1 million acres.
Wow.
But, I didn't hunt that primarily. I started out hunting the King Ranch. I had a close call, and I got pinned down in a pile of cactus with, cattle roundup going on. And that shook me. I got out of that. I said, I'm going to have to find a better place to do this. I was already addicted to rattling them big deer up. So I bumped into a man at the taxidermy shop I worked at down there, and he owned a half a section of land in the middle of the Kennedy Ranch. Well, he took me to trade some taxidermy, and once I saw the inside scoop on that, I hunted the whole county from there, and from the highway both. It didn't matter to me if he wasn't available to take me in and out of there. I'd go without him, and he just couldn't wait to see what I killed. He was as hooked on it as I was.
Wow.
Well, I mean, it's an addiction.
Yeah, I can understand that.
Well, so Charles, around here, we always suspicion during the spring turkey season that guys are getting dropped off and picked back up later and walking and turkey hunting on places. And is there, in trying to understand the mind of a guy who's poaching a property, are there things that you would look for to know that, hey, this property would be a good one I could poach on, or this one I need to stay away from? Are there telltale signs that you would look for?
Well, safety came in the fact also that when I was doing all that originally, they didn't even have hunts available. It was invitation only. So, I had it all to myself, basically. So I was safe in that regard. But as they began to open up the Kennedy Ranch and sell hunts, then, I had to have maps to know which pastures were and weren't being hunted. And I knew them well. And so I just hunted the remaining unhunted part. I know a lot of people study top-all maps. They'll pick a ranch, pick a county, pick the biggest ranch they know is there, and they'll hit the largest ones there, where the big deer are. And that way the odds are in their favor to get away with it. None of my class of outlaw hunter hunted leases. We didn't hunt people's feeders and stands and, walk through there even at night and spotlight their deer off their food plots or something. We didn't hunt like that. We hunted strictly unhunted, large ranches.
Yeah.
I don't know about the unlearned guy, but, I got the inside scoop on a number of big ranches down in deep South Texas because they're there. They're not everywhere, but they are down there. There's still big property down there that's not hunted.
And did I catch you say that you were rattling, it's a calling deer more than anything?
Yeah, absolutely addicted to it.
Yeah,
when you beat the horns and you get sometimes $7 or $8, I don't know how many times I rattle up $8 in one rattle. And, finally rattled up 8 game orders. That was thrilling, but, not near as interesting. I don't have their heads on the wall to remember the hunt.
There you go. You think it was, your fascination with the white-tailed deer or the fascination with getting away with it?
Half the thrill was, the poaching factor, doing something against the law. It was real fun when they would know you were there and hot pursuit would take place. Helicopters and vehicles would swarm it, horseback riders, and they'd come after me. And I'd laugh because usually I'd have to jump on them and I'd already be 3 or 4 or 5 miles away running wide open to get some distance on them. And they'd still be down there just mowing the brush down with them helicopters where I was, not where I was at, but where they had figured out I was in there at. And I'd laugh, it was funny. And we got a big kick out of it. But that wasn't when we were there. We didn't go in there to aggravate them and piss them off. We went in there for the big deer. There's no two alike. And that ranch is full of non-typical deer. And they're all, unique, just outstanding in their, rack designs. There's no telling what you'll see on every rattle.
Mm-hmm.
So you're just in constant suspense. You don't know if you're going to see a 180 or a 230. You don't know.
Wow.
It can happen.
What'd you do with all the antlers if you couldn't really show them off?
Well, my story's long. What happens when I started going to church, I turned in 18 of the first 41 that me and my friends took and wiped the slate clean. Never intended to go back again. Then when I went back, like I said, it was another 75 big deer that we brought out of their total over a period of 9 years. But the state still got, those heads I turned in. I mean, at one time they were in the Hall of Shame down in the hill country. I think they've been moved to East Texas to the fish hatchery, but they were at the academy for a number of years. But it's just such a long story, some here, some there, some everywhere. I've still got a number of heads from that last 9 years scattered all over that just I've let friends hang on to them just to look at them and enjoy them.
And you were taxidermist too?
Yeah. I've been a taxidermist since I was 13 years old.
Wow. Yeah, I can understand your
I'm
fascination.
64 now. So I've been around deer and trophy hunting for 50 years.
Yeah.
That probably, I don't think I've ever met a taxidermist that wasn't a big hunter. That was really
for some reason.
Yeah,
the game warden said most poachers are taxidermists. That's what they say.
That's interesting.
That's a good note.
So they collect data and
So Charles, in the community where you live, when this book came out, how did the local people that have been trying to catch you for all these years, how did they receive this?
I don't live down there anymore, and it doesn't matter. I'm not running for public office, but I was hated then. I'm hated now, but curiosity killed the cat. People want to know how I did it, how I got away with it for so long, and it's a fascinating story. And so I'm finding out more and more that they're just having to be won over to the fact that this was all 22 to 44 years ago. It's a blast from the past. This has nothing to do with your lease last night, last year, ever. I never did that kind of hunting to start with. They're starting to figure out the essence of the story. It is completely different than what they thought. For example, a lot of people think I was nothing but a spotlighter. Less than 2% of what I did involved a spotlight. It was just not the way I hunted. I pulled a drunk a time or two, did some spotlighting, we cut a lock and drove in once. But spotlighting was not the name of my game.
You preferred the challenge of the hunt.
Yeah, the challenge of the hunt.
Well, if you kill one spotlighting, even rattling him up at night on foot and shooting him, you rob yourself and the deer both of your dignity in it. No pride, no lasting memory. You got him. You're not nearly as proud of him as you would be when you rattle up in broad daylight.
That's interesting. It's interesting, too, that you said that you didn't spend time on people's leases and people's food plots and people's stands. You were looking for those vast acreages of land that were invite only.
So the King Ranch was not available for any amount of money to anybody. The first 7 years I hunted down there, it was an invitation deal only. If you didn't have gas and oil, dealings with them or cattle or agriculture, there was always a family connection or nothing. You didn't get to hunt there for a certain amount of money. You couldn't pay to get on and hunt there then. And it wasn't until 1984, a year after I quit poaching and was going to church, that the Kennedy Ranch was opened up any at all, and they opened up 80,000 acres of the 440,000. I think there was 5 or 7 pastures, and I knew most of them, and I'd killed some of my biggest deer there. I had an opportunity and invite to go and guide on those pastures to get the guys, big deer that were going to get to pay to hunt there for about $2,500 a gun. And it fell through after a man in Dallas found out about it, and he used us for the information. Then he went down there and leased it out from under us. And so, that just didn't work out. Wasn't meant to be, I guess. But, life happens, people are that way. That's one of the things I didn't struggle with as a poacher. I didn't have anybody cutting my throat, stabbing me in the back to take away my chance at some spot that I'd picked to go hunt. And then it was back to reality when I tried to do it legal. Here you are with everybody cutting everybody's throat. They didn't care who they stabbed in the back, whose throat they cut, get to be the one to get the good lease.
Yeah.
If it's just a matter of money, if they had more money than you, they got it. You didn't.
Yeah.
In today's world with GPS and phones and texting and
Spartan cameras.
And Onyx maps. There's so much that a access or knowledge a guy can have over his phone, and being able to communicate with the drop-off person. I remember some of Charles's stories that he would have to, if he didn't meet somebody this day, they'd wait 24 hours. I just can't imagine laying out in the weeds for 24 with all the ticks in South Texas. One of the things that you've mentioned here, I didn't realize, and I'm glad to hear that you were mentioning that some of the things that you were doing now are considered felonies. I'm not sure how that plays into Mississippi and Alabama where we are, but I would think that they would follow suit. But it's interesting to know now that maybe the punishment for some of this stuff may have increased enough that it would deter people.
Yeah, I don't think it's that way in Mississippi and Alabama.
No.
I think you get a trespassing ticket, because I used to hear some people say, a trespassing ticket's $125. That's cheaper than any hunting club I could ever join.
Well, what may have got this started out in Texas with all those high fence and those big deer that they're breeding and they have a value associated with those. Yeah. Those guys have probably banded together and made it more painful.
That's true.
So, Charles, if when I communicated to you about being on, one of the things I think I mentioned to you then was about trying to help our guys poacher-proof a property. Can you think of, is there some things that you could share with us, maybe 2 or 3 things that a guy could do that would help him to poacher-proof his property?
If you have someone living there listening for shots, that's the first tip I'd give them.
If you're just say you're like an out-of-state landowner, it seems like it'd make a lot of sense to have a local that you can trust, and maybe let them fish in exchange for them checking your roads for tracks or something, or
even
like
let them hunt. Heck.
Yeah.
Well, they say, Bobby, if you're not hunting your turkeys, somebody's hunting your turkeys.
That's what I've always heard.
Exactly. Well, the cameras are being set up everywhere, and they're seeing a lot of walk-in hunters. And I don't know that they catch them all, but they caught some of them. I tell you who some of them are.
Yeah, that's some really interesting technology now. These like Spartan cell cameras, and several companies have those. But we have one, and within a few minutes, all 3 of us have one. Within a few minutes, you get a picture.
Yeah, up until a few years ago, a poacher could just take the memory card out or trash the camera or something. But now, if they walk by it, that photo is already in the airwaves going to the landowner.
Yeah. Well, I tell you,
exactly.
What we've heard around here too is people using infrared to see the infrared on the camera. So they're using infrared to look and find the camera before they even get there. It's kind of interesting. Okay. So then they can shine a light. Oh, sorry about that.
It's probably impossible. Yeah, it's probably impossible to guard against 100%. But if you can stop half of it, I've got friends that own land that have killed big deer on their property, and the best thing they do is don't tell anybody where it's at. You can't tell them what county. You can't even tell them what county it came from, because outlaws start zeroing in on where these monster deer are coming from, and sooner or later the word gets out, and they'll figure out where it's at. So you just got to keep your mouth shut.
That's good advice.
Very good advice.
Yep. Is there anything that you want to add? We appreciate you being on here and being candid and being honest, but I just want to make sure, is there anything that we didn't touch that you wanted that you need to touch?
Well, what's coming in part 2 is my testimony. I'm a 3rd-generation preacher's son, and, I was a prodigal son as bad as one gets. But I've got a testimony coming for God that's going to blow this whole nation away. I've been through some spiritual experiences that are unbelievable. Supernatural. And, I understand now why I went through that, because God knew I was going to have this platform big enough to tell it. And that's what's coming in part 2. Everyone's going to be shocked. They're not going to, you can't judge a book by its cover. This is only my microphone to get my testimony out to a great many people. It's not just a poaching book. In fact, I'd say the latter outweighs the beginning completely.
Yeah, I would hope so. That's your story is fascinating.
Well, I can't wait to hear your testimony, honestly.
Yeah, we wanted, that was kind of one of the reasons we wanted to talk to you. We, had some reservations at first, but gosh, we believe in forgiveness, and
100%. We've all messed up.
Yep.
I know Bobby has.
No doubt. We've all fallen short. Charles, and these guys will remind me when I fall short around here pretty regularly.
Well, it's great to hear that you found what you're looking for. That's exactly the best way I can put it.
That's a good way to put it, Lanny. We wish you. We do wish you the best. Now, if a guy wanted to buy your book, how is it on Facebook, or how does it get information?
Yeah, just go to my website online. It's www.princeofpoachers.com.
I'm very encouraged to hear that the story of part 2. That makes me feel better about everything. So, but Charles, we thank you for all the trouble that I know trying to. But I think we made you drive around to find a cell service.
Yeah, we appreciate your efforts. That's for sure.
We do appreciate
I needed some things here in town anyway.
There you go.
There you go. Thanks, Charles.
See you, buddy.
All right, bye-bye.
Let that disconnect there. There we go. Boy, that was something else now.
Yeah, it really is intriguing to me. I mean, I can, I hate to say I can understand, because, fascination with deer my whole life, and he talked about it like an addiction. I mean, you can tell that, even at an early age with taxidermy work and building bows, he was fascinated with wildlife. And it sounds like he thought he was shortchanged. Mm-hmm. He really did.
There's some issues there.
Yeah. But it sounds like he's turned it overall into a very positive thing with what he's going to do with his testimony. And apparently he's turned his life around. So, hey.
We're trying.
Everybody's messed up. You can't knock anybody for that.
Nope.
Interesting.
No, you're
so
right,
how'd you find out about him?
So I think, if my memory serves me correctly, I saw something on Facebook about the book.
Yeah.
And I direct messaged him and got a book.
DM'd him, hit him up on the DM.
Yep. It's, so much of what we do with Gamekeepers is, as we try to improve properties and grow bigger deer, have more turkeys, have ducks and everything, it's kind of inherent that you tell your buddies about it. You kind of brag about it a little bit. And so you just always wonder while you're going to the SHOT Show, what's going on at your place?
Hey, my biggest piece I hunt a lot of public land. My biggest piece of advice to anybody who wants to hunt land is shut up. Don't talk about it. You know what I mean? Because, there are pros, people that know places can ask you a matter of 2 to 3 questions. And like he was talking about, zone in on exactly where you are. I mean, even like I was sitting by the old river run or, by this, and they can people are smart, they really are. And if they're, dedicated.
I've been told that sometimes, like on Facebook, if you post a picture, somebody can click on that picture and there are ways to figure out where that was taken. GPS coordinates, maybe.
Yeah.
I'm not smart enough to know how to do that.
Yeah.
But is there some setting on your phone that you turn off?
I don't know, because I don't post anything. I'm not going to. And that's even, I think, not only for public land, but private land too. And maybe that's a selfish act, but to me, too, I'm not knocking anybody that, posts a bunch of stuff on social media, but, it's the thrill I get from hunting, is so personal and so close. I almost feel like, I don't want to brag about it is the best way to put it.
Yeah. And another thing, we work really hard to get what we get
in
the woods. And I don't think of it as selfish. I just think of it as protecting what you've worked hard for so you can share it with your friends.
That's right.
It's never fun to drive up to one of your gates and see blood, near the gate where somebody had shot through your gate and dragged the deer to the road and drove off.
Yeah, and we work so dadgum hard on it, and it is, it is a resource and it's a valuable thing, but very interesting conversation to me.
It was. I didn't know how I would feel at the end of this. I knew we were talking about a sensitive subject that could potentially rub people the wrong way. And I mean, there were certain things that were said and I kind of cringed, but hearing him
come full circle with it.
Yeah, there's something about that.
Hey, look, everybody's path to is a little bit different in life.
That is right.
And I don't think there's nobody that's been perfect. Well, there's one. In this world, I guess is the best way to put it. So, and then kind of what we were talking about earlier, all sins are the same, in the eyes of the big man. So, who are you to judge?
Yeah, and Lanny, you're very wise.
I don't know about that.
And I'm just hoping our listeners will understand what our intentions were with this show.
It totally took a right turn for me, honestly. With him saying that in the end, I have a better understanding of what he was, what his story was for sure.
Yeah, it would. All right, guys. Well, I appreciate everybody being in here. Lanny, you got anything else to add?
Now I'm gonna work on my muzzleloading shooting skills.
Yeah,
I know y'all talked a little smack about me when I was gone, but that's all good.
Dudley, you got
I don't know if y'all did, but I would expect you to, and I would definitely said something about y'all if y'all walked out of the room. So
yeah, we did. So Dudley, you got anything?
No, looking forward to the weekend. I think I'm going to get my first sit in a tree this weekend if I can get my spots planted.
So yeah, you're going to hunt and then plant?
I'm going to hunt, plant, and hunt.
There you go.
That's my plan.
So is your emphasis more on planting or hunting?
Well, you got to get everything planted, but I'm going to hunt. And it might mess up my planting. But
supposed to be a cool snap coming through.
I got a lot of work to do.
Yeah. All right. Well, we've kept everybody a long time. I hope we hadn't put them to sleep. And I hope y'all enjoyed this show and understood our intentions of what we were trying to do. And, Mr. Charles was pretty honest there.
Yeah.
He laid it all out there. So, all right. Well, we'll
get us out of here, Cleve.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of the Gamekeeper Podcast. And be sure to tune in again. Subscribe to Gamekeeper Farming for Wildlife magazine, and don't miss the Mossy Oak Properties Fistful of Dirt podcast with my good buddy, Ronnie Cuz Strickland.